ladies and gentlemen, here we have our special guest, Nicole Ford from Carrier. So before we get started, Nicole, would you please give us a great introduction about yourself? I read so much about you. It is amazing what you've done. So if you wouldn't mind.
Thank you, Min. I am Nicole Ford, and I am the Vice President and Chief Information Security Officer for Carrier, based out of Palm Beach Gardens, Florida. People often know Carrier as just an HVAC company, but we play a significant role in refrigeration and fire and security as well. We're about an $18 billion company with about 56,000 employees and a 115-year history. So we are I call us an old new company because we have such a great history. And just recently, we became an independent publicly owned company, publicly traded company. So we're still yet new in that journey. Carrier has definitely stepped up in a big way over the past year with our expertise in cold chain technology for safe COVID vaccine distribution and new innovations for healthy buildings. So in our digital team, our cybersecurity functions secure the cloud up front so we can leverage data analytics and efficiency in our vaccine distribution with our partnership with AWS. So it's a really exciting time to be a part of Carrier for continued growth and innovation. My job is, as the Carrier CISO, is to protect the organization against cyber threats. So I lead the cybersecurity organization where I have great processes, people, and technology to continue to defend and protect the organization.
Now that is awesome. And reading your bio, you come from both the public sector as well before you transitioned into the private sector. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I know many of the SIA members actually have a footing in both the public sector as well, because they work a lot in the government. What was that like, differences, et cetera?
A lot of differences. So, I've been in both the public and the private sector. I started my career in the Army and worked for Department of Defense for a very long time. I transitioned from the Army to work for Naval Sea Systems Command. And then from there, I went into what we call kind of the public sector of the government, which is more of the traditional agencies, where I work for Department of Agriculture and the Department of State. At Agriculture, I had a really great time and learned a ton of information about cybersecurity and how to actually build a security program. So I really kind of say I got my start at Department of Defense, but then I really honed my skills at the Department of State and Department of Agriculture, where I led large teams. And then the transition to the private sector shortly thereafter, there are huge differences in the public and private sector. One being, the budget cycle. The budget cycle in the public sector is typically 2 years, where the budget cycle for a private company is like the next quarter almost, right? Because we are beholden to the street, and we have to make sure that we are, satisfying our customers, but also our shareholders. So our budget cycle is shorter and really focuses on bringing as much value as possible. Whereas in the public sector, our focus is really protecting and defending citizens. The other thing is really when you think about things like innovation, the innovation cycle is shorter in the private sector. We can pivot really quickly and focus on a specific issue and really bring value in that issue very quickly. Whereas on the public side, it takes some time really to get the investment dollars and to really prove out the technologies in a way that really speaks to the needs of the public, and the implementation cycles are a lot longer as well. So those are some of the differences. I think I've learned a ton from both, right? I think there's a need for both. And really, I think of the private sector having a huge opportunity to really drive innovation and help the public sector on adoption. And so when we can kind of solve that challenge, I think we're really moving the needle.
No, that's great. And I'm going to say this upfront. I'm sure many of the members are going to thank you for your service. I always say this to anyone that served, thank you for your service and your commitment to really to helping out. So moving along though, so what's your thoughts really, throughout all this? Because SIA is in the physical security side. Like, what do you feel about physical security industry really investing adequately in cybersecurity? Because it's such a huge topic right now, like in technologies, in the people. Do you feel like we're doing enough, we're not doing enough, or we're going the right path, or we're behind? So
I contemplated the answer to this for a few days, and I would say that the short answer is no, we're not investing enough,
mhm.
but the future is bright. So hopefully that's glass
Line. Stars
silver
align.
lining. Right. So I think what you're seeing is this convergence between physical security and cyber. And I know you've heard that probably from a
Yes.
ton of people,
Mhm.
but it is absolutely true when you think about how, like in our case, in Carrier's case, intelligent buildings, smart buildings, right? And we talk about smart cities, which would include smart buildings, right? And the ability for the building to have, this data, this enriched data that could be leveraged to really derive outcomes is huge, right? And so anything that, an intelligent, smart building really is comprised of technologies, right? So there's this need to really kind of lean into physical security and cyber to make sure that there's this elegant fit.
Mhm.
And so that's what I'm really seeing now. I see that there was not as much of an emphasis and focus on cyber before because I don't think people could really see the future. But now with artificial intelligence and automation and all of these newer technologies, the convergence of IT and OT and IoT, there's really this, I think, sweet spot where we
Yeah.
get an opportunity to kind of see where the industry can be and really an appreciation from on the cyber side of physical security and vice versa.
Mhm.
So I think that there's a need to upskill the tech and the talent, right?
Yeah.
So we want to upskill the tech in the buildings and recognize that, 30 years to change technology is probably too long,
Mhm.
right?
I
And
agree.
that we should we should really focus on, smarter investments that could stand the test of time and that are easily extensible so
Yes.
that they can be upgraded and updated quickly. And upskilling the teams, right? I think that, our physical security team should have, some IT chops, right? So they should understand how things work and really kind of bridge the gap between the physical world and the cyber world. And I think that there's digital in the middle that each of the disciplines really need to lean into. And so I think that there's a huge opportunity to really bring in, people on the physical security side from cyber and vice versa and across kind of train one another. And if we can lean into that and really kind of move the needle there, I think there's some value.
No, and that's some great points that you made, especially with cybersecurity industry. The resources are so lacking, especially good talent now that people are looking for very creative ways of hiring these staffing. So thinking about that then, with the convergence of both the physical and cyber side, and you talk about cross training that thought leadership there, how does that affect your strategies in your role as an executive at Carrier? I mean, that's a lot to manage. And now you got to maintain that balance of talent.
Yeah, so it's really interesting because I'm starting to look at different skill sets to bring onto my team, right?
Mhm.
So because we're doing work on the physical security side, and really when I think about the OT side, the operational technology side, we're starting to look at, hey, we probably need those skill sets on the cyber team.
Mhm.
How do we grab people from those industries and bring them onto the cyber team, really train them across, right? Because we want them to have a good broad brush of different skills that they can leverage. And then, really use them to help us in how do we look at alerts, on the physical security side and bring them in-house and better understand them? How do we use data analytics to kind of look at predictively at what may happen in a building, or take a series of events and correlate them so that we can understand that there's something happening in the building? What I've also seen is, when I look at some of our cybersecurity incidents, I typically see that there was some sort of physical security activity that happened, right? So really understanding those events and those critical kind of physical security events and how they play into a cybersecurity event is critical. So I think as an executive, I'm not just looking for people who have cybersecurity skills. If I can find somebody who, maybe they've dabbled a little bit in IT, or they have a little bit of, a skill set there, but they have a physical security skill set, I have an opportunity to really, train them and bring them in. And typically they're really great employees to have on the cyber side. So that's really what I'm looking at. The other thing is really leaning into Carrier strategy around, healthy buildings and smart and healthy and intelligent buildings. It's an opportunity for us as an organization to really kind of bring innovation to this area. So we're really committed to doing that and really helping facility managers lean into technology by providing training for our building facility managers and others who are in the physical security space about some of the newer technologies we're building into our products that are connecting them and really bridge them into the digital world.
Yeah, it's very interesting you brought that up too, because they're two different groups, right? Many different groups that you gotta, and it's interesting how people try to maneuver through those different teams to talk to them. So speaking of which, as an executive, let's talk about the ROI. Where do you think the best ROI for this area should be spent on? Is it information technology? Is it cybersecurity? Is it physical security? Is it all the other aspects? Or is it a blend? And how do you determine what's the best ROI? Or how do you feel like you've received the best ROI in technology that's been spent at this point?
Wow, I think it's easy at a company like Carrier, where we're in the security space, right? We're not in cybersecurity specifically. We're focused on safety, but I mean, safety is, when you look at it, is still technology, and it's physical security altogether, right? So it's easy for us. When I think about ROI, I think about how we use cyber to enable our business. If we can do that, then I think we're moving the needle. Of course, there are all the traditional metrics we look at and say, oh yeah, we've got good visibility. We're able to detect a threat quickly. We're able to contain it. All of those things are really, really important. But because of the expertise we have, I think we have a huge opportunity to make cyber an enabler and a differentiator. And so to me, that's really what I speak to when I'm building out a plan or thinking about a specific strategy within cyber. How do I tie it to the work that we do as an organization? And really, my job is to enable it for our business that could potentially be a pipeline for them to sell in the future. So like I said, it's easier for me. And I have learned to speak our business very well so that I can make the ties, so that when I'm talking to the board, it becomes very real to them.
Yes.
And it's a win-win, right? So in everything that we do, I think as a leader in it, specifically in cyber, how can we make it a win-win for everybody? And right now, I think I'm in the right company with the right strategy and the right mission. So it works for us.
And it's interesting you say that, because you talk about communicating to the board. How do you disseminate this downstream to your employees and the rest of the team below? Because that's going to be critical too.
So I still look at cyber in kind of like our the golden age, right? So we've got all of this activity. I would think about it. We're like 30 years old, maybe 40. That's kind of dating me, but really maybe right.
Just so you know, so you don't feel so bad.
Okay. So I look at the fact that we're still so new, and because we're new, I think we have an opportunity to really shape this and become brand ambassadors
Mhm.
for cyber and this, like I said, this physical security and cybersecurity convergence, right? And what it really looks like. So I really look at the cyber leaders as pioneers. And so we spend a lot of time on branding in this space and how we communicate it to our employees, our customers, and our partners and dealers. That
Mhm.
ecosystem is so important. And so really making sure we have tailored messaging for each of those players within the ecosystem is important, and where I've focused a lot of effort. So like awareness and training is one thing,
Mhm.
and we do that for our employees, but also we're developing awareness and training for everybody within the ecosystem, and we believe that that really will move the needle.
I mean, you are good. So I'm going to pivot then really quickly. So you talked about being brand ambassadors, right? And for your third party. So what's your strategy in handling with all the recent attacks that you see on third party supply chain? And we won't name them here. Don't want
Right.
to target on our back, but using them an example, what have you learned from it? How do you feel like your strategies are moving forward as brand ambassadors in dealing with these third party and supply chain risks that's out there? Um, how do you
So,
manage that?
so gone are the days of really kind of thinking about Carrier as an individual company in and of itself, right? We have to create this circle of trust, right? We got to know our third parties. We got to know that they have clear security program responsibilities
Mhm.
and what that looks like and whether or not it aligns, right? So we're all interconnected. I kind of look at us as like this Rubik's Cube, right? We're always trying to get all the colors right, right? Industry for industry.
Mhm.
But in general, we all have a part to play. And making sure that we have an understanding of who those partners are, what this ecosystem looks like,
Mhm.
and what role they're playing. And if they're playing their role properly, it's like being on a baseball field, right? If your person on first isn't, focused, right? Uh, Or the person on second isn't doing what they're supposed to
Mhm.
do, or even the person on third, then it becomes a challenge. So it's really having visibility into who those vendors are, onboarding them properly, helping them to understand that we believe cybersecurity is important, making sure that we're evaluating them pretty frequently. And when things happen, it's reaching out to them and providing and lending support to them. Some of these vendors are small mom and pops. They don't have the dollars to and the budget to spend as much as we do, but we could provide education to them and help them understand what they need to do and how to get it done. So that's my mandate to my team. We've invested a lot in that space to
Mhm.
make sure we have the right talent and that we're providing the right focus. And I think it's going to pay dividends in the
Yeah.
long run.
No, that's great advice also. So people who are hearing it, Rubik's Cube, don't take the cube apart and put it back together. It doesn't work
No,
that way. Work your due diligence, because if you don't play your part, it doesn't work. So
exactly.
part of the resilience series is really providing the industry awareness. And so what's your philosophy throughout this? Spreading information security throughout your organization into your partners. Like what kind of education is needed, and the pitfalls that's there that really help us get through to people?
So going back to what I said prior, when I think about our motto at Carrier, we use the cybersecurity as everyone's responsibility.
Mhm.
And so you'll see that, like if you get on a Zoom with me, you'll see my background is cyber focused. And I'm always really like being the brand ambassador for what we want to see. I think making training and awareness accessible to everyone is something that we're doing, and is reaching out, equipping and empowering our vendors like we just discussed.
Mhm.
And it's just investments in time, energy, and education for everyone. It's having internal events where we make cyber visible. We have capture the flag events and all sorts of events that are supposed to be fun and engaging, but I think it really helps people to get involved, and it's really spreading awareness so that we can collaborate to really solve difficult problems. That's with our vendors and our partners and our customers. They come to us with specific requirements, right? So if they see something like a colonial pipeline, then of
Mhm.
course we're going to get calls, right?
I didn't
So
call it out. You did.
Hey, I did it because it's true, right?
It's true. No.
Remember, news drives activity. And so we see that. And so we're prepared when things like that happen to have
Mhm.
sound bites ready to help them
Yeah.
understand how are we positioning ourselves to defend and protect the organization at any given time.
No, that's really, really good. Sorry. I'm like, I didn't call it out, but you did.
You didn't. I did. So hopefully I don't get calls about it. What I'm saying is that, you know, the most recent events, the
Yes,
conversation in the space.
I know. I'm teasing, by the way.
So don't call me on it. Don't call me
No,
on it.
don't call either of us on it. Let's just put it on
Happens.
that. So speaking of all this, all this great advice and all these
Yes.
experiences you had, let's talk about a little cushioning. Cybersecurity insurance, that's like the buzzword right now.
It is.
People are saying you got to buy cybersecurity insurance, but there's so much endorsements that go with this. How important is cybersecurity insurance to the risk management portfolio, and how do you recommend the type of endorsements and underwriting that has to happen specific for the insurance policy that you got?
Oh, wow. That's a
Hard one. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's a hard one. Let me see if I can answer it. So cyber insurance is important. I think with any risk, you need to have some way to kind of transfer that risk. And so that risk transference is really important. When I look at our portfolio, cyber insurance is just one piece of what we do to secure and protect the environment. We take risk management very seriously at Carrier, and to us, we look at it as just one avenue of managing our risk. Cyber insurance is getting a little more complicated because of all of the payouts. And so we certainly are kind of cognizant. We stay attuned to what's happening in the industry to understand how that's going to affect our premiums and how that really fits into our risk portfolio. So we have a team of people, a risk management team, and they do a really fantastic job in this space. I think we also really want to make sure that we're focused on prevention as much as possible. We know it's not if, it's when, but we also recognize that we can do a great amount of things to really kind of reduce our risk. And we focus on those, like what are we doing in prevention, right? And what are we doing in the area of detection? And when we actually talk with our cyber insurers, it's really helping them to understand what we've built and how the program is evolving, and really lean on them to kind of think through maybe where our gaps are and where we need to focus our efforts. It's just another data point for us really to kind of look at and say, if in the event that something happens, are we prepared? How prepared are we? And what will that look like? And really model that out. So it's a really good activity for us. And cyber insurance is something that I think is necessary for all organizations. The question is, how does it fit into your portfolio? And how much risk does it really reduce for you?
Agreed. And that's a big question mark for many people right now, especially that's going through it right now. I'll be one of them, and I'm pulling out my hair.
Good luck. It definitely is a challenging process, but once you get it under your belt, for the first, maybe even the second year, I think it becomes easier. Yeah,
I agree. So as we're coming to an end, I'm going to ask you one last question.
Okay.
So what is your favorite getting buy-in from your board or your CEO? And what's the best win in your current role? And what you see would change in the next couple of years within this industry for you?
Oh gosh, that's a loaded question, right? So
don't worry, we won't blackmail you with anything if that's what you're worried about. That won't happen.
I would certainly say, anytime you're getting ready to spin, I think I have a unique situation, right? So we spun and I had to build a cybersecurity program. So it wasn't hard to get buy-in, right? I think I spent more time kind of trying to benchmark our program against our industry, right? To make sure that we're spending the right amount in the area of cyber. And so I would certainly say just being able to build this program has been a big win for myself and for the organization in general. I think you have to really spend time with your executive leadership team and help them understand how expansive cyber is and where they fit in, right? Like, so what are you doing to protect their part of the business is so important. And making sure that you are aligned to their strategy and you can get them a few quick wins has been so important to me. In that, it really helps them to understand how important cyber is to the work that they do. When you can connect it to them, you can make it real for them. And that has been something that I've spent a lot of time really trying to do. And so it's to the point now where I think people get it, right? They get it. They see cyber in the news.
Mhm.
They understand like the importance of it. It's just as people's, and this is for all organizations, as employees, as executives, digital acumen
Mhm.
improves, you'll start to see more buy-in just over time. And I'm seeing that. Like, I think COVID really helped accelerate the acumen, and the training for people, right? Because
It
now I
is,
have
yeah.
to, I'm at home, I'm working remote. I really need to understand
Yeah.
how the technologies work and how it helps me to be productive. And I think that that really accelerated our growth over time in our understanding of the work. And so with all of that, the outlook for cyber in general, I think, is still challenging. I think we still have a ton of progress to make. The public private partnership is really important, and
Mhm.
how we lean into that. I think our ability to innovate as quickly as possible and to start to anticipate what's going to happen from a threat actor perspective
Yeah.
is where we need to be. And our understanding of um, technologies and being able to kind of forecast the newer technologies that we need in order to fight cybercrime is going to be huge. So I mean, all of these things
Yeah.
I think really are challenging but yet exciting. So I look at my job as a superhero, right? And so, we have different kind of like challenges that happen, right? You think about the superhero is there to kind of fight the fight for
Mhm.
the public and to win, right? But it takes us some time to figure out that threat actor and what it will take for us to win. But
Mhm.
I'm always of the mindset that we will always win.
We will always win. And I always like to make a little quirk about we have to think like the criminals, which makes us really bad
It
sometimes.
does, right? You got to use your powers for good, right?
We're
So we
good.
use our powers for good. And part of that is sometimes, really kind of leaning into our criminal mind and say, how is a criminal thinking about this so that we could really provide the best levels of controls
That that
necessary.
that's 100% right. And for the audience out there, if you're going to come after us, remember that we think like criminals. So don't don't come after us. Just kidding. And that being said, Nicole, thank you so much for your time and so much for your sage advice to the audience. We really do welcome you and admire the fact that you're taking on this crazy superpower role, like superhuman role too, in a sense, because you're really managing a huge company there.
Yeah.
And really thank you for taking the time out to actually conduct this interview for SIA and showing the audience who you are. And with that, to our audience members, thank you for listening in, watching in. Please do not come after us for
Please
calling out
don't.
Polania.
No.
We
We
have more.
didn't. We just called it out as an example, but not
Good.
necessarily the only thing that's happened. So, just understand we just basically that news drives